The great advance made during the First World War was made under the pressure of operations, when suddenly they were confronted with a situation where they couldn't see what was behind the enemy lines. You had hills, you had woods. The terrain meant that your view ahead was very limited. But up above, of course, the aeroplanes were flying and being intercepted as well and shot down, so it was a hazardous business. But as early as September 1914, the Battle of the Aisne, for example, British aircraft were taking photographs of the German positions, and these were being used for artillery targeting. They would be able to bring fire down, sometimes by light signals or smoke signals, sometimes using very primitive wireless, on the German artillery batteries. And during the war, mapping from aerial photographs became very, very sophisticated, relying on the Western Front mostly on existing control points, church towers and corners of fields and so on, that could easily be identified on the existing maps. Large areas of France weren't that well mapped. The existing French maps were 19th century ones. They weren't very accurate. And so they were able to actually make much more accurate maps from the aerial photographs. On other fronts, if you look particularly in Mesopotamia, Iraq, and the Middle East, and Palestine, for example, where there were not necessarily any good maps available at all. In Palestine, we had the old British Palestine Exploration Front maps, which were a help, certainly. In Mesopotamia, there had been no really accurate mapping at all. So aerial photography was really branching out here into literally new terrain. They were making new maps from aerial photographs, obviously problems of controlling them, using, finding points, known points, trigonometrical points that they could use was a problem, and they found various ways of overcoming that problem, but including making the aircraft fly as straight and level as they could, and taking overlapping strips of photographs, which were also very useful for stereoscopic examination. When you've got a stereo pair, then you can get a three-dimensional image of the ground. So we can say that during the First World War, the Germans and Austrians were very advanced in photogrammetry as well before the First World War. That's plotting from photographs. And aerial photogrammetry was developing as well, but it wasn't really until the post-war period that aerial photogrammetry, particularly in the depiction of relief on the terrain, became very, very effective and sophisticated. But tremendous advances were made during the First World War. To simplify, the problem of mapping inaccessible territory could only be done from the aerial photograph. There's no other way of doing it. Spies and agents could send back little bits of information, but nothing very coherent or pinpointing. But aerial photography offered the scope for getting a completely new and complete picture of the terrain behind enemy lines. And of course, with that, all the intelligence that went with it.